Okay, so my goal in this video is to get you to the point where you can walk into a coffee roaster and they're going to have a big selection, and I want you to be able to look at the information on a bag and have a good idea of what to expect from that coffee and then how to go home and brew that coffee. So I would say the first thing to look for is elevation. Okay, you won't be able to see the roast level, but there's certain things that you can expect from roast levels in a coffee shop. For example, a good coffee roaster is probably never going to do dark roasts. And I want to just kind of set the standard right now, just that don't even consider grocery store coffee or any of the big chain coffees. They're just almost going to always do like a dark roast coffee. And the thing about roasting is, over time, you can bring out like certain characteristics of different coffees, but when you get to the dark roast level, it just removes all the character and you're left with like a extinguished campfire flavor like that. And that's all you're going to have. So I would say dismiss those for now. We're in a coffee roaster, you're almost always going to deal with either a light roast or a medium roast. And of course there's a spectrum there. Now light and medium roasts are paired a lot of times with different elevations. So I want to talk about elevation and how it affects the flavor today, and then also how it's going to affect your brew. So how about let's start off with a low elevation. Low elevation coffee is anything basically below 2,500 feet. And from that you can basically expect like a nice, smooth, standard, enjoyable cup of coffee, low acidity, not a whole lot of character, but just, nothing that's gonna knock your socks off, but just an enjoyable cup of coffee like that. And if you find any snobs who say, "Oh, I don't bother with low elevation coffee," Anyway, now when you get to medium elevation coffee, now again, I would say, actually, yeah, not again, but anyway, I would say like the low elevation coffees are almost always going to be like a medium roast in a coffee shop, because that pairs really well to bring out the flavors of that coffee and to give you a nice smooth experience. When you get up to medium elevation coffees, then you're getting into nuttier, a little bit more characteristic flavors, but nothing that's a huge departure. And I'd say if you like low elevation coffees, try a medium elevation and see what kind of flavors you get, and if you like it. That's going to be anywhere generally between 2,500 and 4,000 feet. You're going to get a little bit more nuttier, like hazelnuts. You'll see like notes on the bag, that have these kinds of characteristics, caramel, things like that. You might see like chocolatey on there, I guess. But anyway, I would kind of expect those beans to be medium roasted as well, just because that's also a pretty good roast level to bring out the characteristics of those medium elevation coffees. Now, once you get to the higher elevation coffees, that's when you're probably looking more toward a lighter roast, because as the process goes on, it's going to reach those flavors, and those flavors are very delicate for the high elevation coffees. And so you want to stop kind of early on to make sure that you retain those flavors if you're a roaster. So then basically I would probably, if you find a higher elevation coffee, I would expect a medium roast, and the flavors that's going to bring out is going to be like citrusy notes, fruity notes, floral. These beans now at low elevations, those beans have very good conditions for growing. They're going to be larger beans in general, not always, but comparatively, if they were growing at higher elevations, the same bean, larger, more porous, less dense, easier to extract. Okay, so once you get up to the high elevation coffees, those beans are going to be small, dense, very hard, not porous, not very soluble, more difficult to extract. So one thing I'll do when I walk into a coffee shop is, if I'm looking for a high elevation coffee, I'll look for a bag. Let's say all the bags are like a pound, or maybe 500 grams if you're in a different country. I look around at the bags and they're all equal weight, but I see that one looks like less volume. I can guess almost certainly that that's going to be from a higher elevation, and those beans are going to be smaller. This is not always the case. but I don't want to get into too many details because this is still white bell coffee here. But anyway, that's just kind of like a baseline thing. If you want to look for a high elevation coffee, maybe look for a bag that has looks like a smaller amount in it, because those beans are just smaller and more dense. And they actually tend to weigh more than the big beans, because those big beans lose part of their mass in the roasting process. So, all right, so let's say you buy one of each, you bring them home, and you're going to brew those cups of coffee. Okay, how are you going to approach each one differently? I'd say for the low elevation coffee, again, these beans are probably bigger, more porous, less dense, easier to extract. So some of the variables I would consider is maybe a little bit on the larger side in terms of a grind. So if you're doing something like this, I might do as large as like a medium grind. Now, if you have your own grinder, maybe check and see the stats online, like what constitutes a medium grind for your grinder. If you don't have a grinder, you can ask a barista at the roastery there, or the coffee shop that roasts. I would ask them if they could grind it for you. Now, it doesn't keep as long if you do that. That's the problem. So, generally, if you, like after roasting, you look at the roast date, coffee will be good for about, I would say maybe 6 weeks. That's when you'll still get some decent flavors. But after that, usually not so much. I'd say maybe since light roasts are denser and high elevation coffees are denser, it might last longer. But again, those are pretty delicate flavors, so maybe not. This one was roasted just a couple days ago. So there's an off-gassing period, by the way, too. Maybe I would say wait 3 days after roasting, and then brew those up, and you'll get a more accurate flavor. So, so this one's been, they roasted this 2 days ago, so I'll try this tomorrow. Okay, back to the low elevation coffees. I might do something like this just because one of the variables for extraction is agitation. And so if you have like a really difficult bean to extract, then you're going to do more agitation. But in this case, I don't want that because it's a low elevation coffee. It's much easier to extract, probably a medium roast as well. So what I do is I'll do like a 17-to-1 ratio for this, where I put in 17 grams of water for every gram of coffee. So let's say I want to do 20 grams of coffee, 340 grams of water. I put the water in at boiling temperature. Okay, and I've got about a medium, maybe a medium fine grind, So then I put the coffee on top and I gently stir it in and just let it sit. And after about 3 minutes, then I put it on a cup and it goes through. So low agitation, slightly larger grind for something like that. And I think that'll give you a good baseline. You can taste it. Again, if it's sour, then you need more extraction. If it's bitter and just terrible, you have too much extraction, you need to adjust those variables. So if you're dealing with a medium elevation coffee, I might actually try both, like medium elevation, medium roast level. I'll probably try both like one day after another like that. And I might even make notes about it. So I might try this one day and get like caramel flavors. And then let's say the next day I try this one and I get like fig or gingerbread or something like that. And it's like, what on earth? You can actually get different flavors from the same coffee just by using a different brew method or a different recipe, which is just wild and awesome. So I'll probably do something like this, and maybe I like both, but they're so different. Maybe one day I'm in the mood for like, the flavor that came out of this one, and the next day I'm in the mood for this, the flavor that came out of this one. So I might just use them both, and that's totally fine. If I'm dealing with a high elevation coffee, small bean, very hard, very dense, not porous, difficult to extract, I want to do a finer grind, and I probably want to use something like this that's going to work well with the amount of resistance that's created by that finer grind. So then I put this on top of the cup, and I have to create a lot of agitation by constantly moving the water around and keeping it tossed up and stuff. So I'll have not only a fine grind and high heat, but then I'll also have agitation, a lot of movement, just to assist with the pour over and to try to get the extraction that I want from this kind of coffee. So so these beans, like this one, is not going to be easy to extract, and so I'll have to do a little bit more, like kind of push the variables in that direction to try to get this. So I hope that helps. You know, you can always ask your barista, you know, whoever's there, if you see the roaster, if you spot the roaster. Usually they're not as like personable, but if you want to talk roasting with them, then they'll light up, and they'll actually this place JBC is awesome. And I just walked in there one day. I saw it was nearby. I had no idea it was in near Madison. And I was in the Madison area, and I saw JBC was in the area. I was like, holy moly. I went in. They don't normally do coffee tours, but I told him, you know, I love your guys' coffee. You know, I think you guys do such a great job roasting. And he's just like, hey, check out the place, you know. Gave me a free t-shirt. I bought some of his coffee, of course, you know, but amazing, awesome operation they've got set up there. So if you spot the roaster, like a grumpy guy or whatever who looks like he doesn't want to talk, well, he wants to talk about roasting, believe me. so you can ask them, say, you know, I really kind of like this kind of coffee. Like I like just more standard flavors, and you know, like I just like I don't have very good reactions to the acidic flavors. It'd be like, oh yeah, don't bother with these over here. I mean, especially like Ethiopia is very well known for that. But even my Costa Rica here says 2,000 meters. What's that, like 6,700 feet? That's crazy. That's pretty high. Yeah. So anyway, so he'll almost certainly explain a bunch of things to you, and probably a lot better than I do, because I mean those guys really know what they're doing, and they can just talk your ear off. So anyway, hope this helps. If you have any questions, let me know, and yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. All right.